podcast world. What's up? Chad Belding back at you. Another episode of the Fowl Life podcast. Excited for this one. We are going to do a little different today. We're going to do a deep dive. We're going to take something that has become what I have considered the Bible per se of the American waterfowl hunter for the last 10 years. I know that when I get the Wildfowl gear issue, it usually comes sometime in July and August. And when we open that, it's kind of like our referral program of what's new, what's out there, what are the manufacturers doing, what do the print ads look like, what are the details on the new duck calls, the mud motors, the boats, the guns, the ammo, the apparel, the decoys. And Wildfowl has done an awesome job of giving the reader, the end consumer, their potential customer, just this book to go to throughout the entire season of recommendations and reviews and details, like I said, on all of the products that have become mandatory or become a go-to for many of American and Canadian waterfowl hunters, both duck and goose, diver ducks, puddle ducks, doesn't matter what source you're going after. It's become the Bible. Is that fair to say? One of my guests today is the editor-in-chief of Gun Dog Magazine, I believe, Predator Nation Magazine, Wildfowl Magazine. He's the one and only Skipper Knowles. Skip, how are you, buddy?
Very good, sir. Good to see you. I don't run Gun Dog, but you got the rest of it right. Yeah,
you got the rest of it right. Skip, am I onto something there with this magazine right here? Has it become a Bible? And I don't know if I should say that word with people on the line from the South because I'm not trying to sound derogatory, Kelley Powers or Josh Dokken. But this has become the Bible of duck and goose hunters, has it not, Skip Knowles?
It absolutely has. It's something everyone looks forward to every year. And it's just, we have worked so hard. It's the most gear-intense sport on earth, I believe, certainly in the hunting world, waterfowling. And the opportunity to come together with this grand amalgamation, it captures everyone's passion and has a ton of informative stuff on tactics and how to, trying to make everyone better hunters and learn from it as well. And then provide an aspirational aspect like, just get your blood fired up about going new places and seeing new things. And number one, of course, is, man, you just look at all that gear and get so excited. Just the duck call section alone can get your heart thumping if you're washed in the blood,
No, I agree. And our other two guests today, we're humbled to have Josh Dokken from Banded Brands and Kelley Powers from Final Flight Outfitters. I've known both of these individuals for a long time. Josh, I'm going to start with you. You're born and raised in the state of Minnesota. You now make your home in the capital of duck hunting, in my opinion, in the state of Arkansas. You're a few hours from the Grand Prairie as the crow flies and as a car drives. Do you agree with what I just said? When you were living in Minnesota and coming up, did you look forward to that mailbox opening on that day, kind of like a big game hunter does out west and sees that mule deer tag in there? Did you always look forward to this magazine?
Yeah. That's kind of the start to the season, so to speak. Mix that with catalogs like what Kelley's store there will send out. Those are the things that kind of get you geared up for the year for sure.
And Kelley, being in the state of Tennessee and you're in the retail game, you're a hunter first and foremost, though. You're a game caller, Goose world champion, awesome duck caller. Did you look forward to that magazine every year?
Yeah, absolutely. Because not only, from the industry insider, we see a lot of stuff at SHOT Show, but the average consumer doesn't have those, they don't have those opportunities. So when the gear issue comes out, I mean, it is. It's a first look, and it gets the blood pumping and gets you excited for the fall because as you mentioned earlier, it is a gear driven sport. Gear drives enthusiasm. It gets people back excited. And fortunately for this year is no different than any others. There's a lot of good stuff coming down the pipe.
Kelley, would you say that in your 40 something, maybe 30, late 30s you are, years on earth, do you think that, and as a duck hunter, goose hunter, do you think that apparel has changed the most in the game as far as the ability? If you think about the trailblazers back in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and what they were hunting in, how did they even stay in the field long enough? How did they stay dry? How did they keep the wind off of them and survive those elements? Yeah. With today's technology and what you've seen as a retail, would you agree that, I don't know, maybe decoys is right there too, but it seems to me that the technology and the innovation and design that's gone into today's apparel for the American waterfowl hunter has just, it's evolved 100%.
Absolutely. We'd all love to go back, 40, 50 years ago and hunt in those times. But I always put a disclaimer. I'd love to hunt in those days with today's clothing. And, my dad tells me the stories of going behind our farm shop, and he was with his dad, my grandfather, and literally they would set him on a stump because he didn't have boots to wade. So he would sit there on a stump with his single shot shotgun and just shoot ducks there in the timber all morning. And of course, goodness, I can't imagine even doing that today with the clothing that they had back then and not even any boots. But yeah, for the most part, I would say, and Josh, you may agree here, but the fabrics, is what's really developed. When you talk about hard goods, decoys and stuff like that, you're imitating the real thing. So there's not a whole lot. Granted, you get better paint and better different features as far as durability, but from an apparel standpoint, the innovative part of different style fabrics, and that's moisture wicking, moisture management, waterproofing, all of that, and the 4-way stretch with the different fabrics that are coming out with all these different companies. My opinion, that is what is really innovative, and seems like every year there's something new that's great.
And I know you just said Dawkin's name, and Dawkin, he works right in the thick of it. He's involved in a family of brands that, it's pretty vast, from the decoys to the blinds to the accessories to the lifestyle to the tactical gear for not just men anymore, though, youth and women. And Josh, when you go to work every day, and obviously the quarantine's been a little bit different and challenging and working at home, but I can tell you're in part of the office right now. Glad to see you back in the headquarters. Is apparel something that drives that gets you going, Josh, like a duck call would somebody, or a boat might get somebody going? Do you look at the selection on a daily basis when you're working within those walls and get so giddy to see what Kelley's referring to with the new fabrics, the 4-way stretch, the innovation?
Yeah, for sure, and I would echo what Kelley said too. That really is where a lot of the biggest technological advancements, I think, have occurred, at least in recent years. Now, I still get excited about duck calls and decoys and all that stuff too. I mean, you can only look at a fabric for so long, and most of the technology in the fabric, like Kelley described, is microscopic. I mean, it's in the membrane, bonded between the outer and interior fabrics. And I'll tell you, it is one of the things that I like the most. It's also one of the biggest challenges, because I think as a whole, as an industry, we have a lot of educating to do on the advancements of clothing. Specifically, it's go back to those olden days where they didn't have anything, and then there was a stage of the heavier and bigger it is, the warmer it is. And that kind of carried us for a long time. And we're finding out now that that's not necessarily true, that some of the most important things are having that moisture wicking base layer to get the water off of your skin. And then some breathable, waterproof, outer shell components, and layering's big. And we're learning a lot of that, honestly, from the mountaineering industry, that where it's life and death sometimes when you're climbing Mount Everest and things like that. They really have to push the limits. And so as hunters, we kind of are following suit there, but kind of ramble a little bit. But yeah, I think it is the biggest advancement, and I think there's so much more out there. And I also think that, we have a challenge to kind of really tell that story more.
And when you say the word challenge, and Skip, you can weigh in on this, waterfowl hunting in a whole, in my opinion, is challenging. I think that there's a reason why it's the smallest demographic, and I know all three of you gentlemen will have your reasonings, but it is intensive, gear intensive. It's expensive. And then you got to have all of the things that go into being proficient, of being able to scout and find ducks and geese and consistently find them and have success through calling and decoys and jerk strings and boats and motors and navigating and whatever it is. And then you got the identification process of making mistakes out in the field, and how many mistakes could potentially be made by the everyday duck and goose hunter. So there's a lot of laws and regulations that go into being a successful waterfowler as well. But there's a challenge out there that of getting new people into this part of the hunting segment. Is that all agreed upon by everybody on this call, that it is very challenging to get new people, women involved, kids involved because of the elements? And where I'm going with that, Kelley, I want you to start, or Skip, you start, is with the innovation of clothing and apparel. That's a huge advantage that we have right now of saying, hey, you can stay comfortable and drier and warmer for longer and experience it out there. Even if the ducks aren't flying right away, you're not going to get cold and want to go back per se. Is that fair to say, Skip?
Oh man, I look at the outfits that I have for my little children now compared to the cold rubber boots that I wore. My dad thought the highest evolution of apparel was a pair of rubber hip boots, and I trudged around after him. We always got cold. And what Josh was saying about how we're kind of adapting some ideas from the alpine community, and that's been going on a little while, because that can be a life or death situation. Well, duck hunting can be a life or death situation too, in a hurry. It can be extreme, as we all know, and we all heard about I don't know what year that great storm was that wiped out so many duck hunters. I'm sure if they weren't all wearing cotton canvas jackets, more of them might have survived. But back to your point, there are many barriers of entry to waterfowling for sure, and it is daunting. I was listening to some guys on a podcast talk about how small decoy spreads sometimes can work, but the truth is bigger is always better. And putting out up to 40 dozen decoys, or being able to pay for them and having a trailer, it is and as you said, the laws, it's tough to follow everything. The challenge these guys have, Josh and Kelley, is to convince people that what they have works. Because like, you can't look at a fabric and go, that's a 4-way stretch. It's hard to explain and convey. If I can tell you a little story, when I moved to the Pacific Northwest in the late 80s, in my mid-teens, my father was moving us from like South Texas and then Florida, and he was very concerned about the climate. He was super excited about all the hunting opportunities. He had all the ocean ducks, brant, harlequin, and inshore he had the famous Columbia Basin, 3 species of deer. He was so excited, but he recognized that it could be extreme. And he spent all this money trying to outfit us, kind of beyond our means, on very expensive Gore-Tex, new at the time, jackets by, probably don't need to say the brand, and super expensive boots by another brand that is still very prominent, but they didn't know how to use the Gore-Tex. They didn't know about seams. They'd sew and stitch right through it, and then all of it leaked like instantly. I had a $600 outfit as a 15-year-old in the 80s, and I was instantly wet everywhere. And Gore-Tex pulled back and seized the right to be proprietary on the design of anything that they had their product associated with after that. And from like 1998 or so on, you couldn't find a Gore-Tex product that would ever fail. And it's pretty much been that way since. But convincing the consumer that, hey, this stuff is worth it and it works, especially if you're premium, is a challenge for everyone in the apparel industry. I'd like to talk to these guys a little bit about what they would tell a new hunter. You're talking about barriers of entry, and they look at some of the brands that are so expensive. How would you tell a new hunter, what they really need and how much they really need to spend? What fabrics are in fact worth it? If you guys could touch on that a little.
Kelley,
Josh, you want to go first? You make.
I'll go real quick. I would say, and this is gonna. You got to have some trust and an open mind with this, but I think that I would encourage everybody to start with a good base layer, a good merino wool. It doesn't matter what brand it is, preferably banded, but a good merino wool base layer. And I think that's sort of the to use the analogy of building a house, that's the foundation. It doesn't matter what outer shell you have. It doesn't matter what comes after that. If you don't get the moisture off of your skin, water's the enemy in comfort, in terms of comfort, both from within and from the exterior. So that's sweat. And I would also say that, the human skin, even just naturally, if you were to put this under a microscope right now, I mean, there's water molecules on your skin, and then you accompany some wind in there, and now all of a sudden you've got some ingredients to get cold if the temperature drops. So I think that it's starting with a great base layer and then building that system. Obviously, a waterfowler needs a waterproof jacket. I would also suggest, and this is also tough because generally the technologies within them are pretty advanced and it makes them expensive to be made. But you're talking about something that's really thin. And it doesn't feel like it would keep you warm, but it will if you use it in the system like it's supposed to be used. So I would say start with a base layer, and then I would get a good waterproof shell. There's many of them out there. We make one as well, and then there is and then just when it does get colder and you need some extra warmth, get that mid-layer insulation piece. But I would trust the system, the layering system, and I would start with, as boring as it might sound, a base layer, a good moisture wicking base layer. That's my advice.
Kelley Powers, when you go off of what Dawkin just said and what Skip's referring to, and we also talked about the intimidation factor. I think another level of intimidation, like Skip touched on with the decoy spread, is when you open up the Final Flight catalog or you go on to banded.com, it's freaking intimidating. There's a lot to choose from. On top of that, if you do get the experience of walking into a Final Flight or a Max or one of the, the more well-known retailers in the country, it's like a freaking you're like, it's like a adventure theme park in there. There's roller coasters everywhere in there for the duck hunter, and there's all these ups and downs of this buying experience. How do you, Dawkin and Kelley, go first of how do you complement that? How do you make sure that when that buyer comes in, because how do you know when you open a catalog what that fabric feels like? Do you have to go to the store and feel it first and then go buy it in the catalog, or do you have to see your buddies first? How are you guys getting that message to these consumers when there's so freaking much to choose from?
And I'll jump in on that. For us, the convenience of shopping at home obviously is great, but you miss out on a huge element. We call it the see it, feel it, touch it. If I can walk into a store, whether it's Max, Final Flight, whichever your closest retailer is, if I can see the product, if I can feel the garments that it's made out of and touch it, that allows you to try it on. It's going to fit you and all that. The online experience, you can never get that. So if you have a place you can physically walk into a brick and mortar store, you get that. For us, at Final Flight, we try to categorize things. There's different ways that we can showcase apparel. You can showcase it by weight. If you need a heavyweight garment or a lightweight garment or this and that. For us, we go the visual aspect. We categorize things according to color. So we'll have your mossy oak bottomlands, your realtree timbers kind of in the general area. You'll have the mossy oak shadowgrass blades, all that. So basically you have your grass patterns and your timber patterns. So when a consumer walks in the store, if they're hunting for the most part out of a pit all season, or they're goose hunting in layout fields, they're going to go to those grass patterns. So visually you've automatically eliminated, half of the apparel market just off of what they can visually see in the store. So a lot of retailers will lump all those together, and to me, it kind of clouds the judgment. So what we try to do is to eliminate options to steer them in the right direction. So now that they're in, let's just say they're a timber duck hunter. Now that they're in the bottomland section or realtree timber section, they can go in there. Then they can shop according to weight and all that. And as Josh will know, what these apparel companies have done from a feature standpoint. If you're a timber hunter, goodness, man, you've got stuff with the shortcut weight or the shortcut length that comes down, above the waist for wading in water, the way the pockets are featured. And that's what helps us retailers get consumers excited, because I get excited myself when you see a certain wading jacket that has the pockets that go around to the back where I can put a pair of gloves or put a little, portable jerk cord or different things like that. So I envision myself, how would that be beneficial for me this fall? And that gets me to go in the store. That gets me to shop as well. So for us, that's kind of how we generate excitement and all that. We start it from a color standpoint just to try to eliminate some SKUs and to help the consumer better.
And when you start talking about the tradition and the buying experience, do you feel, both you and Dawkin, because Dawkin goes to a lot of retail events, is it hard to change the consumer's mind, Dawkin, in duck hunting? Is it hard to take the tradition and the heritage and the history out of it and show a timber hunter like, hey, you might not want to stick with this style of a wax canvas that you've been hunting because of some of the attributes and benefits that Powers just explained?
I don't know if I would say it's hard to get them. Here's what duck hunters care about most, and that's duck hunting. So if you can convince them that it will help them, kill more ducks or get in the field and stay there longer to kill more ducks, I think it's definitely doable. I do think it's challenging because, like you said and Kelley mentioned, there's so much and there's so many different camos and different things like that simplifying the buying experience is probably one of the biggest challenges. And then you do have this online component, and like Kelley said, you can't touch it and feel it, and all those that are important, which is why we find it important for retailers like Final Flight to be there and to offer that. So it's, again, to answer to your original question, I don't know. It's tough at times, but not necessarily because of their mindset. It's just tough to convey all of the stuff that you want to convey to them.
So is there such thing as too much, Powers? Can that jacket have too much? Have you seen manufacturers add too many bells and whistles to where it doesn't make sense anymore and it just becomes a cluttered up system?
Yeah, I mean, they've made it too expensive, in my opinion, on some manufacturers. And there's some garments from years past of different companies that I felt like are great garments, but, necessarily the certain zipper pulls and this and that, they could trim some of that off and make it a little more affordable. But then again, there is a certain demographic that wants the best, and they want those bells and whistles. So it's just kind of the good, better, best philosophy. And you kind of offer some of those items.
Skip, when you start thinking about what the magazine now and how you lay the magazine out and how the apparel is laid out, is it just laid out is it A to Z? Is it alphabetical order from manufacturers, or do you have a strategy in starting with what Dawkin touched on? I want to touch on this base layer system a little bit more, because Dawkin hunts. He's hunted in the coldest of elements and the warmest of elements. Is there a way to get that to a consumer in this magazine when they open it up this year that, hey, let's start, this base layer doesn't have any camouflage on it. This is something that Dawkin just said is right there, and it's one of the most important parts of your comfort level in your hunt. Do you have a way or a process in your mind, Skip, when you sit down to do the writing and the copywriting and the descriptions to paint that picture for that consumer that he might not be able to touch and feel it, but he's living through that magazine and that sparks his interest to it, maybe go to a Final Flight or his closest retailer, because he's going to have to touch it before he buys it, in my opinion, but maybe not.
Not very technical, and it probably doesn't reflect well on my journalism heritage, but we try and go with what in our gut is the most exciting, what's newest, what makes the most sense. I don't like bulky stuff. I don't like heavy stuff. I love stuff that lets you move. And if there's something that is dynamic and exciting about a product, we try and move that and give it a more prominent position. We try and run with what we think is the coolest in most situations, to be blunt. But that we could probably do a better job of trying to educate people on. I love what Dawkins said about starting with a base layer, because most people, they don't look at that first. They look at that fancy new jacket that they want, and they don't think about their socks, right? How important are those? Not very sexy, but when we lay out the magazine, we're thinking of what's newest and most exciting, what we think will work the best, and what we're excited about, frankly.
Is it the same way at the store level, Kelley, that has to be an easy transition from place to place within that store in the apparel department? How do you do what Dawkin just said? How do you get them to stop at that base layer? Because it's like Skip said, it might not have the camo on it. Is it something to do with the hang tags and the POS? Are these manufacturers doing a great job to where when you walk into Final Flight, you see this POS display that Dawkins' words and what he comes up with on educating that consumer of which piece you want? You might be hunting in Tennessee where it never gets out of the 50s, let's say, whatever, like is the consumer being educated every step he or she takes within the walls?
Yeah, a lot of that responsibility too, comes with our partners, with like Josh and Bandit and us and Drake, and we can go on down the list of the different clothing manufacturers. But we feel like as a retailer that we have a lot of responsibility to tell the brand story. I know with our catalog, for example, we partner with Bandit and Drake and the different companies to where they'll help us do the layouts, and because they can tell their story the best. I can do a certain layout, but I might misinterpret their message or what exactly the products are made of. Furthermore, the in-store experience, all of our employees, I encourage them when customers are not around, go and look at hang tags. I want them to know where the product's made, how it's made, the garments it's made out of. And we have reps that come in, whether they're independent reps or the owners of the company. Fortunately for us, yes, the waterfowl community is a small community, but we're good friends with the owners and guys like Josh and people that that are involved with these apparel companies, and they help train us, they help train our staff. So when that product comes in, we can relay the correct message to the consumer about what the product's made for, how you would want to use this product in certain environments, how you would want to start with a base layer, like Josh mentioned. All of those go hand in hand. And we feel like we have a great responsibility because, at the end of the day, yes, we're a retailer, but we like to say we're partners with our manufacturers. And there's a certain responsibility that comes with that. And however we can do our part and relay that message in a face-to-face manner, then that's where we can really help the consumer and help the manufacturer, and we all win.
How important is that, Dawkin, for the consumer after he or she gets out of that Wildfowl magazine and they go into the retailer, they go online? Is a lot of your day in your position, Dawkin, with Banded, laying this story out, laying this educational process out of the POS and the displays that somebody like the Powers family is going to rely on to getting that message in detail to the customer?
Yeah, it is. We have a website, but all of my time is spent building information and the both for the retailer and for the consumer to buy at the retail level. And like Kelley said, we basically think of the retailer, our retail partners like Final Flight, as extensions of our brand, and they're really the front-facing component to talk to the consumer. So, I spent a lot of time developing the message out so that it can be understood what they're buying. Like when Kelley goes to write his orders for the year, he understands what he's going to be offering the consumer, and then trying to help the best I can to make sure that the consumer understands why they should buy it.
And then what about first to market, Doc? And how does it come in when Kelley's talking about and referring to the different fabrics and the different technology that's out there? Is it important to be first to market with that, or is there exclusivity on some of this technology that some of these brands can only use? That brand has it, exclusive. How do you figure that out in your head, Doc, and of being like, okay, we have to show this, we have to show the experience and tell the story of this brand? Are you selling the Banded product on the story, or is it that much more technically supported with the fabrics and everything that you're talking about? Is it advanced compared to other brands, or is this a culture-based sale and a story-based sale with a quality product to back it up? Because a lot of these manufacturers, I assume, have the rights or the ability to get the same technology. Is that fair to say, or is that false?
So I think that the quick answer is it's false. There are proprietary technologies, and though there may be some similarities, there's differences too. And I think that we are telling a story with our brand of what we stand for and what we believe in. And that is also the same story that we tell through the products and what we make, because at the core, and I'm not saying that other waterfowl apparel manufacturers aren't this, but I know what we are, and Kelley can attest to this, and you can too, Chad. But we're duck hunters here in this office. Like we have very few people. I mean, very few who've never duck hunted who work for us, and they would be somebody who was not making a product related decision. So everything we make, sounds cliche, but it comes from the field. It comes from practical, functional use, and then how can we make it better? So that's where it starts, and then from there. We're constantly looking at the market, constantly aspiring to find what's next, the next innovations. And from there, we find these new technologies, which come across. And though in a lot of ways you can't reinvent the wheel, through time, there's always something new happens. And so there is new technologies out there, and they will come. And I hope that, we're the brand that releases them.
And I know that Kelley educates at the store management level to not be biased during this experience or this educational process for the end consumer. But does it make sense, Kelley, that these associates at the store level on your sales floor they know this story that Dawkin's referring to, do you want your sales associates, and I know you mentioned reading the hang tags and stuff, but when Dawkin sits down and plans out this, let's say a quote unquote planogram for the marketing for 2020-21 in accordance to Skip's magazine that him and Layden are getting ready to release at Wildfowl, is there a pride taken to be that retailer that does a better job with the banded story and takes it to the next level because the associates are so versed in it?
Yeah, I mean, the general rule that we tell our staff is, not to be overly persuasive, not to show bias. And I think that way you're staying neutral. You can say, in my opinion, I like, for example, me personally, goodness, I love hooded sweatshirts and pullovers. I've got some from every brand, and there's bits and pieces that I like about each one. It doesn't mean one brand is better than the other by chance. I mean, there's some features that I like better, but goodness, they're all fairly nice. But the shopping experience that the consumer can get, if you can steer them in the right direction and state factual information, if you're going to be hunting in rain, I would steer toward this garment because of the waterproofing. If you're going to be hunting in wind, I would steer toward this garment because of the windproof liner. Those kind of factual information is helpful without necessarily showing bias. But then also is to kind of be a mouthpiece for the brand as well when something new is launched. When Bandit has something new this year, then new fabric, new technology, tell that story without being biased and saying, hey, man, this is the greatest thing ever. This is all you need, even though you may feel that way, but just try to keep an open mind to where the consumer can decide. And we found when you put all the brands up and you try to give them equal space, the cream of the crop rises in their categories.
So I'm going to Canada. This obviously might be far-fetched because we don't know if that's going to happen right now. Let's all keep our fingers crossed. I'm going to be up there mid-September through the first 10 days of October, Josh Dokken. I'm going to be mainly concentrating on wheat and pea fields. The temperatures are going to be anywhere from, I'm not going to do the Fahrenheit deal, the Celsius deal here, but it's going to be anywhere from lows of 20 to 30 with a high of 45. I need a great pair of bibs. What does the consumer look for in that pair of bibs when he's either reading a description in Wildfowl or the Final Flight catalog or banded.com? You're a dryland hunter, Josh. You grew up hunting a lot of Canada geese in Minnesota. What do I look for as a new hunter being a dryland mallard duck and Canada goose hunter in a pair of bibs?
So I think you're going to look, for factual information first. And there's going to be a lot of fluff there, but you're going to want to try to find out the technical features. Is it waterproof? Is it breathable? Is it windproof? What kind of abrasion resistance does it have and durability? But you're going to want to find out, those type of things first. And once you identify those things, they kind of guide you into the temperature-based thing. Now, you mentioned some temperatures that are quite different at 20 degrees and 45 degrees. You're going to want to have options. And that's why I go back to the layering system and going lighter. Another reason, because it gives you options even in the field versus if you just put on the heaviest, thickest thing you can find.
And Kelley, if I'm going to be looking for I'm a timber hunter and I want a bag that is going to let me operate with ease once I'm at my tree. What am I looking for in a timber bag? I'm going to Arkansas for the first time and I want to be organized and I want to be stealth. What does this bag have to have in Kelley Power's opinion?
Well, you've got to have good shoulder straps because most of the time you're wading in or walking in at long distances. So it's got to be portable. That's number one. If you're going in by boat, well then that's, you could go to just a regular shoulder strap and not necessarily the backpack straps. If you're a wade-in hunter, I think you would narrow in towards, your backpack style. Number two, some type of waterproof bottom. If this is going to be hanging on a tree limb where the bottom is going to be close to the surface of the water, you want some type of waterproof bottom if available. If you're going to hang it up high, it's a little different. Not only that, then some type of functionality, whether you're hanging on a tree limb or a strap that'll go around the tree, and there's different manufacturers. Bandit has some great different designs and cool stuff from a feature standpoint to where you can hang it around a tree or hang it on a tree limb. And then pocket features. Obviously, your most used pocket is a shell pocket. If you're not going to put shells in your jacket, within some readily accessible pocket that's easy to open and that normally would stay open, where your shells aren't going to pour out. So there's a lot of different feature things that go into play there. But my opinion, I like a small style backpack that is, I try not to carry too much stuff, but then you got to have your essentials, your gun or your shells, your gloves, a headlight, stuff like that. So I try to have the essentials and where it's small and portable. But me personally, in a timber scenario, I love a backpack.
Josh, why did it get so? Did it take a manufacturer longer than it should have? In my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong. The chest pockets for your hands when you're in a hunting scenario. Timber might be at Kelley. You know what I'm talking about. Skip, you know it. These are the best things ever invented, in my opinion, as a hunter, instead of just always having, a front belly pocket or something that was just regular standard pockets. Is that become customary now, Josh, to where most of the cuts are going to have that type of a pocket? Or is that something that's more of a timber scenario? Where do you see, how does a manufacturer go about pocket placement and the usability, the functionality of a pocket? Because some of them have been put in places to where they never get used. Some of them they're not comfortable enough to use. They're not practical. How important is pocket placement, and how much time is Bandit and other manufacturers need to be thinking about that?
So it's funny. I hadn't thought about this like this until you brought up that question, but pockets really are a great depiction of a brand's authenticity in the space, because the only way you know if a pocket is right or good, like the upper hand warmers, is if you were out there in the water, standing there, realizing, oh, I don't have any pockets, I need to put them up. That's the only way you find that out. So I think that, and to answer your first question, why it's taken so long for that to happen, or however long it was, or why pocket advancements keep advancing. I think it's just because there's not a lot of waterfowl, specifically waterfowl clothing manufacturers out there, and it was probably that Kelley's grandfather and people back then didn't have a manufacturer to say, hey, y'all need to put some hand pockets up here. So I think that that's just becoming more and more common. I think that it's really a young sport, as far as it's not young in sport, it's young in product. In current modern products. So I think that it's just going to continue to advance. We put a lot of emphasis on pockets, and you try to, one challenge is you try to evolve and advance and innovate, but you also got to watch yourself, because it can get to be where it's gimmicky. Like you're just trying to find another pocket to put on it. So you try to stay practical too, but a lot of time goes into the cut, the pockets, the everything from the adjustable cuffs, the zip out liners. There's a lot of add-on kind of accessory type components to just the base cut that get a lot of thought.
Kelley, when you wake up in the morning and you're going hunting now, because you hunt a lot, you're quiet, you're the quiet assassin, because you just stay quiet. There's not a lot of social media fluff out there about KP. You choose that lifestyle. It's very, very, I love it. I love how you've done it. But when you think about where waders have come from when you and your brothers and your dad were on the river and in your holes, is it probably the biggest advancement in the history of hunting? And I'm talking high power rifles to optics to everything. These waders that are available now for a duck hunter, the breathability, the warmth, the insulation, the 2.0 from Bandit, and the lighting systems and the pocket placement and the cell phone. I mean, just, could you ever imagine the Cadillacs that we get to walk out into the woods or the marsh with now?
Yeah, I mean, goodness. I mean, when I first started hunting, it was just the rubber waders. That's all you could get. And then I believe, what was it? The brush tough. Lacrosse had the brush tough, the canvas, style. Were great. And goodness, you could run through seemed like a briar thicket with them and not get any, tears. But then again, the weight of them were heavy, and not just Lacrosse, but I mean, that's all that was available from a material standpoint. And then the transition went to neoprene, and neoprene, I always made the statement with whether it's gloves or waders or whatever, you're taking a fabric that is a 4-way stretch fabric that is waterproof, that's going to go in water, that absorbs water. So when you come out of the water, if the air temperature is below freezing, well, now you're froze stiff. So neoprene has some benefits in some fabrics, but when it's going to go in water, it just seems like when it's out of the water, it freezes stiff. It seems like there's better materials. And then it goes into the innovations that you're seeing wader makers make today with the breathable style fabrics, with the pull-out insulation and stuff like that. And, with the breathable fabrics that are abrasion resistant on the outside, the insulation on the inside, it's probably half of the weight of neoprene and the old style canvas waders. It's just a better product. And Dawkin will agree with this. All waders, waders is a absolute very difficult thing to manufacture and to make because you're appealing to different style hunting. And then a lot of people are hard on waders. They're just hard on a pair of waders. So the manufacturers have the odds stacked against them to make a wader that is very, very durable, that's going to last and to be waterproof. But for the most part, our manufacturers that are out there today have done a pretty good job. And not only they've done a good job manufacturing, the service end of it has been outstanding.
Kelley Powers, and then Dawkin on this, and Skip, you can touch on this. How long should a pair last? If a customer comes through Final Flight's door on 2 months into the season and he's just hunted 60 days or whatever from Canada down to Tennessee, what do we tell these guys? How long are they supposed to act? Yes, they do cost some money, but everything comes with a cost. This isn't something to where you're taking care of it like a car, even though you can bundle them up and put them in a bag and dry them out and make sure that they don't rot and stuff like that. But you're walking through stumps. You're getting in and out of boats. You're getting in and out of blinds. There's sharp stuff. How long is a pair of waders supposed to last, Kelley Powers? Because we hunt hard.
Man, that's a loaded. So that's a loaded question. So for us, we actually and Bandit help provide this. We have a dunk tank. So if you're a customer, you come in to Final Flight with a pair of wet waders. First thing that we do is we go into the back and we literally have a tank that we put an air hose inside it. We blow all the waders up like a balloon, and then it dunks them underwater. So what we can identify then at that point, we can identify where the point of entry is. Now, if it's at a seam, and then that highlights us to, okay, this is possibly a manufacturer defect if it's within a certain time frame. So then that steers us down to one road. If it's not in a seam, well, then it can show us to where there was a rip, and then that falls back on the consumer, and that's a point of abuse. So if that's the road you go on, then what we do is we find aftermarket products that can help patch that, whether it's wader patches, glue, or whatever. But for us, when you blow that thing up with air, it doesn't lie. You're going to see exactly where the point of entry is, where the water comes through. It helps. Not only that, a lot of times the boots don't leak. They just don't leak. People are hunting and they're sweating and not realizing how warm the boots are. And when they take their clothes off, their pants legs are wet. But when we blow them up with air, and we'll bring the customer back there and say, hey, look at this. And they'll look at it like, well, yeah, you're right. Because it doesn't lie. When the waders are blown up with air and there's not any air bubbles that come up, then there's not a leak.
And when he's describing that feeling around your socks and your calves, Josh Dokken, the breathability, you're down in Arkansas, it's getting a little bit warmer in the morning. Sometimes it does feel wet. Sometimes it feels like there might be a leak, and then you take it off and you're like, wait a minute, it was just air passing through, that it's breathing, and it might be hitting a little, sweat or moisture on your body. I think that a lot of people think that might be a leak in this dunk tank. Obviously, Dawkin was put into effect at our retail level to be able to say, hey, no, this is what's going on. You be rest assured you're not getting wet from water leaking through your waders.
So to your point, we call it condensation, and it does happen, and it happens a lot. Especially, that's one of the downfalls to technological advancement is we find out things along the way that we weren't prepared to talk about or answer. And one of those things is in breathable waders, because the temperature is changing between the fabrics on the inside and outside so much, because you're getting that hot air out, you can experience some condensation, and it can be enough to where when you take the waders off, you're seeing some moisture down there. And like Kelley said, we found that out early on too, and so that's why we were one of the brands who've been kind of influencing the test tanks, so that we could show like, hey, no, the in some cases, and not all cases, but in some cases, hey, we're pumping a lot of psi of air into this thing. It will bubble if there's a leak. So we do that. Now, I would also say it's just, you're talking about one of the most challenging things, because one, water's the only thing in the world that can't be contained, right? And we're trying to do it in a waiter, and then we're going to do it in the worst temperature out there, and then we're going to do it in the toughest conditions out there. So I mean, it's a challenge, and it's not something that we say, oh, we've done a good job this far. We've gone away from neoprene. Let's just hang our hat. We're going to continue to keep pushing that category forward and figure out how to make it more and more durable, but at the same time also affordable, because there are ways to do it to where, you know, you got to take out a house mortgage to contain water. But it's an always ever evolving innovative category for sure.
I think the evolution of waders is so awesome. There needs to be a documentary on it, Kelley. You should star in that, host it with your looks. Kelley, it's been 6 months almost since SHOT Show. About 6 months, 5 months. It's been 5 months since SHOT Show. 5 times 30, 15, Skip, help me out. 5 times 30, 150 days, Kelley Powers. Gear issues getting ready to drop. Wildfowl 2020-21 duck season gear issue. What are you excited about, Kelley? You see box after box after freaking box of gear getting dropped off at your distribution center daily. Dawkin has sample after sample after sample flooding his table and his desk and probably his bed. His wife's probably over the samples. Is there anything that gets you two individual gentlemen fired up when you live in it and you literally are wading through product every day? Are you excited? Is the gear issue going to get people fired up? What are you guys interested and excited to see?
Goodness, that's a tough question. You know, Josh, I was like Hunter McLemore, which is, you know, obviously one of the reps, and me and him had this same discussion. And Hunter said, you know, being in the industry since he was in diapers, in a sense, because of his dad's involvement, he's kind of numb to a lot of the new products that come out because he's seen so much, and a lot of that comes with me. It's just, you kind of get numb to it. But let us not kid ourselves. You know, there are times that I even walk through the store and I'm like, goodness, I didn't know that was out. And even though me and Josh have been emailing each other back and forth about laying the catalog out about those exact products, but until I saw it myself, or you see it in like the Wildfowl magazine ad or whatever, you know, you still get excited. There are different innovations in fabric. Obviously, with camouflage patterns, that creates interest. And I can tell you first and foremost, you know, our slowest times of the year at our walk-in store is probably, you know, the months of May and June. And come July, from the first 20 days of July, traffic really picks up. Now, this is on a normal year. This year's been crazy for other reasons, but on a normal year, July picks up. And the direct result of that, it's when your gear issues hit, your catalogs hit, not just Final Flight's catalog, Max's catalog, all the other ones hit. And it helps everybody. I mean, when Max catalog hit, it helps all of the other mom and pop retailers around that people may see it in Max catalog and they go into another local store, or they order it from Max, or they see it in Final Flight's catalog, they order it from Final Flight. When those hit, it helps everybody. And especially when the Wildfowl gear issue hits, it coincides with all of those catalogs hitting. And it's great. Then when we get into the month of August, it's a little bit starts to lull out a little bit. It's toward the end of August and even September. And then when October hits, it really starts picking back up for the waterfowl season. But the month of July, it's kind of your interest peak because of catalogs and magazines, and new products are kind of hitting the shelves. And most retailers in the South have a July 1 to July 15th to August 1st delivery date. So they're receiving most of their new items, you know, around that July 1 time frame. And our customers are trained to that, and they realize that.
Dawkin, get us fired up. Kelley just did a great job at setting the time frame. Get us fired up for when this cover's opened up and people get to see Wildfowl. is there something new from Bandit? I know there's proprietary information. I know that we're not going to go into a lot of detail, but what are they going to see? Is there a new wader coming? Is there a new jacket? Are the women hunters going to be fired up for what Bandit's bringing to the table? Get us a little bit excited and get us through some of these dog days of summer.
Well, we do have some really exciting innovations coming for this year, and I'm not going to. I don't want to say we don't have anything for women because I'm not sure. I think we maybe have some new products in those categories, but our biggest initiative this year is we're launching a line. I was talking about the innovation of technologies and fabrics and waders, and we've teamed up with a new technology company that makes membranes. And we're going to bring something that's never been brought to the hunting world before, and it is truly a difference maker in terms of comfort and moving moisture away from the skin and keeping moisture off the skin. And inside that line, there's going to be a wader jacket, a couple jackets, some gloves, beanies, some core products. But the name of that line is the Aspire Collection, and so inside of all those products and aspiring for new innovations and all that, there's also a customer experience that's going to be in with that too. And it is all about aspiring for more, looking further, dreaming bigger, pushing limits. It's been a very time consuming and dutiful task, but it's definitely starting to kind of come to fruition. And we're releasing these print ads to magazines and kind of helping Kelley with the catalog pages was the first time that I had laid out a page to the consumer, and it was kind of surreal, also challenging because there's so much information in those little fibers that I'm trying to convey. So the Aspire Collection. And we'll have more info on that soon. It is by far our biggest initiative for this year.
Aspire, Aspire. Kelley, you can't say Tennessee, and you definitely cannot say the family farm. COVID hits, and you only get one hunt this season. I don't care when it is. It has to take place between October to January 31st. I'm going to say February 15th, just in case you want to say the Front Range of Colorado. Where are you going? You're probably going to be taking Kip and your boy. Where are you going? Who are you with? What are you chasing? And what are you wearing?
Oh,
we already know you're wearing Bandits, so you don't even have to answer that last question.
Saskatchewan's near and dear to my heart. I mean, I love it. I wish it was a closer drive. If they ever open the border back up, and they will, but when they do, that's where I want to be, outside of my home area. It's just, and not any. And listen, we've all been fortunate to hunt all over the whole province, and even other provinces, Alberta as well, and Manitoba. People ask me, well, where do you like going? It's all Canada. I've been to some places that you can get your limit quicker than others, but at the end of the day, it's just unbelievable, the vastness of the area. The people are great. It's like a home away from home for me. So that's where I'm going.
So are you hunting mallards over mojos in a pea field and just swatting them when they come in there? Or are you challenging yourself a little bit and going after canvasbacks on a big body of water? What are you doing in Saskatchewan?
I love hunting mallards and Canada geese. That's my two specialties. I mean, people, when I got into goose calling, they said, "What's a goose caller doing in Tennessee?" And I said, "Man, listen, I started out hunting timber and hunting mallards. So mallards is near and dear to my heart, but I do like to hunt the Canada geese as well."
And when you say Canada geese, do you get to do that much anymore, or is Tennessee have Canada geese? You have to travel.
Yeah, unfortunately, nothing from a migratory stance anymore. I mean, very few numbers, but for the most part, if you shoot a Canada goose here in Tennessee, it is a resident now, and that's unfortunate. When I was a lot younger, it was different, but not now. It's a sad state. So most of my Canada goose hunting is up north, in some of the northern states or into Canada.
And Skip, I'm going to assume that you're wearing a pair of Crocs with knee socks pulled up, a pair of khaki shorts with a camouflage jacket on and a goofy fishing hat, and you're jump shooting wood ducks in North Carolina. Is that your kind of choice?
Yes, and you'll be right there by my side.
Tell me where you hey, nothing against the Carolinas and nothing against wood ducks. I'm just saying that I think that that's a big reason why a lot of Carolinians and a lot of Georgians travel. There's a lot of outfitters in Arkansas and other states that'll tell you a big part of their customer base comes out of that southeast region of the country because there's not a lot of prolific mallard duck or puddle duck hunting. Where are you going, Skip? Are you going somewhere, because you've been all over the world with Terry Denman and Ramsey Russell? Are you going to Peru or are you going to Arkansas?
Well, you kick it Arkansas till later, but it's funny. So many things flashed through my head when you said that. Like I had a burner teal hunt on Vandemore's place a couple of years ago, but the highlight of that hunt was going out with Aaron McCauley and shooting 25 of those little rail birds a piece, and the way he cooked them, and just that whole experience was so immersive and unforgettable. And then I've had so many Canada hunts. It's like Kelley was talking about. It starts to feel like nothing can rival it. But I've had hunts in Southwest Nebraska that actually were better than Canada, that were just mind blowing, and for both greenhead mallard ducks and the biggest Canada geese that exist. And I would do anything to do that, repeat that. And not to pander, but you were talking to me at SHOT Show and showing me pornographic piles of speckled-bellied geese, and I've always wanted to go to California and experience that. And you were like, let's get some dates in early December. I like new experiences as well as the comfortable old ones. And I'd always love to go to South Texas because that's where I first started as a 5-year-old, following my dad through the marsh, down near Corpus Christi.
Well, plan on the California specs, 10 birds a man per day, and we eat almost everyone we kill the day we kill them. They're amazing. Josh Dokken, is there a such thing as Canada goose hunting in Minnesota anymore? Is Rochester still have meaning to the Canada goose hunter? And forgive me for my ignorance, but is there a duck season in Minnesota? And if so, is there any success on ducks in Minnesota?
Man, there was 10 years ago. I haven't looked at the season since. I swear, no, I haven't. I'm down here now, and I just don't make it that time of year so bad. I don't make it back up there much. So I can tell you that the goose hunting was always great there. You could argue that the older folks would argue that it wasn't as good as it used to be. It was still plenty good to me. And the duck hunting was tough, very tough.
Very tough. Now, Kelley, when you think about your mentor in goose calling, rest in peace, TG, what comes to mind of Tim's choice of apparel? Was he committed to Nat gear his entire career? Remember the cornfield camo days when it was him and Freddie and a couple and Alan and Gary McCree and I think maybe even Sean Mann. What do you visualize right now when he calls you tomorrow morning? Hey, bub, we're going here in October. What goes through your mind about Tim these days? Is it still vivid of all of the experiences that you had? Because the dude is literally unforgettable. Do you still think about him a lot? And is there anything that sticks out?
Yeah, I actually made the comment a couple of days ago. I'd give anything to talk to Tim to hear his take on this whole virus situation, because he would have some great one-liners about our whole situation and whether how you feel about it. He would always have a pretty interesting take, I'm sure. But yeah, Tim was always a Nat Gear guy. He wore the Nat Gear camo. And he loved it. From a concealment standpoint, that's just what it was. And Hunter, even still to this day, loves the camo and that. But no, man, Tim was great and always would have some interesting comments. And again, goodness, I couldn't imagine what his comments would be about the whole coronavirus and the whole situation. He would always have I guarantee he'd have an interesting take, and you would have some funny quotes coming from it.
Oh, 100%. I miss him. I miss talking to him some. I don't know what he would say about the coronavirus, but I know he'd be thinking about what it was going to do to his duck and goose season. Is there anything else, Skip, that we can talk to our readers of Wildfowl about? Can we tell them what they can look forward to? Is it going to be more social media? Is there going to be more interactive website? Can they get more instruction from the Skip Knowles Laden Force crew at Intermedia and Wildfowl? And when can they get started? When should they get started? Should somebody be practicing their duck calling right now, Skip? What do you practice right now, Skip, besides haircuts and stuff? Like, are you fired up for the season? What is going on in your mind right now of how we can take that experience to this reader, and when should they start getting ready for that?
I kind of joked that the catalog, when the catalogs come out and the big gear issue come out, it kind of provides a cheerleader effect, because you can look at a duck call and you can look at some waders over here. You can see a few things in a store. But when you see it all together at once, all that gear, that's what just blows your mind, man. Then you throw in 3 or 4 experiential stories that really get the heart going, a bunch of techniques that make you feel like you can do it and you can go out there and kill something. Because Josh talked about it a little bit earlier. He's like, you know what duck hunters love is duck hunting. And even aspirational duck hunters, they want to see birds. And what we do is we're going to try to give them every advantage and that they can to do that. You know, to explain to them that maybe neoprene waders, a lot of people love them. They can be super durable and comfortable. To me, they feel like a giant knee brace and never dry out, you know, and I haven't worn them in years. And we're going to give people those insights that they might not find anywhere else, and help them make decisions about this great American waterfowling tradition that we're so proud of and we all want to perpetuate and maximize our participation in.
Kelley,
but as to your other question, we are trying to absolutely, you're going to see it. Wildfowl's been a powerful print name for so long, and we're uniquely positioned with Outdoor Sportsman's Group to convey a message across all of our platforms, and we're uniquely positioned to do that, and we're absolutely committed to it. And you're going to see an escalation in that direction. I'm no longer considered a print magazine editor, but a brand manager. And yes, we're going to see a lot more excitement in that way.
So will you be able to approach Kelley Powers and get him to lay down a short read goose calling tutorial on wildfowl.com and have somebody be able to go over there and learn how to blow a goose call from Kelley Powers? Can they go on there and find Josh Dokken and he can teach them a little bit about waders? Is there going to be an interactive part of this to where you're going to have people with some credibility within the industry educating your online reader and subscriber?
We've absolutely gotten a new budget that's never existed to do exactly that. To answer your question, because it always comes down to what does Neil Davis at Hornady says? He says money. What was the question? He goes, the answer is money. Well, what was the question? Well, my company,
I love Neil Davis.
Isn't he great? Our company's committed funds to each editor and each brand to actually do exactly what you're talking about. What I would like from KP there, though, is a short video. The first thing I would like from him is a short video of that wader tank immersion with a pair of leaky waders. It's got to be something to see.
I think it's pretty cool.
We can pull that off.
Well, just hope they're not yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking, because Dawkin, I hunt quite a bit, more than most, I would think, but my waders never leak. They just don't. So I just want to get it out there that I know it can happen, and I know there is going to be a manufacturer defect once in a while, but it just, if you hunt hard, these waders are going to last. But I don't know if the mindset should be like, I'm going to spend this much money on waders and I'm going to get 5 seasons out of them. I don't think that's fair to the manufacturer if you hunt hard.
It is an interesting, I have this thought a lot. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought, no matter where you land on it, of because when something does fail, you hear, well, I used it 2 times and it failed. Okay. That doesn't sound like a lot of times, but what were you doing in those 2 times? And how did you care for it afterwards? So it is interesting that, and I think that's just going to vary depending on the value to each person and they're in the environment that they're in. But one thing I'll add to that, Chad, is that I've noticed this a lot, and I actually have taken on a project which we'll have ready for this year on our website, where one of the biggest reasons I think that a wader will leak isn't necessarily what happens the day of the hunt. It's what happens after the hunt, because you're talking about what's keeping this wader from leaking and not leaking is waterproof laminate tape. So just think just take a piece of Scotch tape, for example, and pretend that that's this for the sake of the story. And then you're going to go out in the water, and that's all that's keeping the water from coming in the stitch seam. Everything has to have a stitch seam. So the tape goes over that to protect it. Well, if you're going out in cold water, and I see this all the time, guys will just take their waders off, throw them in the back of their truck, and they'll sit bunched up like that. I mean, think about what's happened to that tape that whole time. And so I think it's just a matter of, we've got to educate people on how to care for the product better. Not to where you have to inconveniently baby it the whole time. I think there's some education to do on how to take care of the product after the hunt, specifically waders, where you have, a piece of tape keeping the water out,
hanging them in the right temperature and making sure that they dry out the right way.
Wash them off. Not wearing jeans underneath them. That's something people don't think about. But the denim, the rough abrasion in the seam on like a pair of blue jeans, you rub that against tape. Anything that's gonna hinder the performance of the tape.
I agree.
Think about the. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
I was just saying, we just need to get people to think about tape. That's what it is. There's tape in there. And if you think about it like that, I think you take care of it differently.
Is there a wader out there through Bandit or any manufacturer, Josh Dokken, that does not have what you're describing? Is there another technology that takes care of that problem and there is no tape over a sew seam?
Not in terms of breathable. Not in terms of waterproof breathable waders. Now there may be some that use like a where it's in different places, like where it's just down by the boot or something like that. But at some point you have to connect fabric together or at the boot, and so there's going to be some version of a seam. And in that case, you use a waterproof laminate tape. So you, regardless of what you use, you're going to have to accommodate that.
Are you comfortable with telling myself what arc welded means when it comes to a bag or a certain design? Do you guys hear the word arc welded before, Kelley?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Josh, are you comfortable in telling me what that means so I have a good understanding and definition of arc welded?
Yeah. So it's hypersonic bonding basically. So you're basically taking the two pieces of fabric and gluing them together without the stitch. So generally you would take two pieces of fabric, and I'm using my hands. I don't know why I'm doing this, but you take two pieces of fabric, put them together and then stitch them together. Right. The arc welded basically just glues it, seals them together without a stitch, and then it's taped. That's taped out. So you're essentially removing the stitch hole, which is a failure point, a potential failure.
And Josh, where could our listener and Wildfowl reader go to? Is there a page dedicated to this at banded.com that will educate them in all of the different styles of the banded wader system?
As far as which wader to buy, or as far as how to care for them?
Everything. Is there going to be that in this experience that you're talking about where the end consumer is going to be able to, entrust in Banded to give them the A to Z about our waders?
Oh yeah. It'll be at banded.com. All of that will live at banded.com. I was going to give you a specific URL, but I don't know what the later part of that question will be yet, but it will be there. It'll be in a place probably labeled care and care instructions or something like that.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for the season, guys. I appreciate all of your time and your credibility and all of the information that you guys have been able to put into your brains over the year. There's so much information out there thrown at a waterfowl hunter, and it becomes controlling. It can literally eat up. I mean, it's done it to me, and I've gotten caught up in the game of how much gear, how big of a decoy spread do I need? How many jackets do I need? Do I need a pair of waders in every different camo? Things like Wildfowl and finalflight.com and banded.com and all of the messaging and content that your crews are putting out there, that Seth's doing and that you're doing, Dawkin, with the ambassadors and pro staff, and what Skip is doing with his writers and all of his independents and his editors. We have the ability to tell these stories, and we have the ability to give somebody the upper hand when it comes to making a decision. It might not be we're giving them our opinion of why we choose to do it this way, but there's so many different ways to hunt ducks and to hunt geese and to dress for it and to prepare for it and to be good at it. And how you measure success is up to you. Piles make smiles. I don't know if that's the case in waterfowling. I think that that's a phase that you're going to go through, but I think that there's so much cool innovation and cool information out there that people like yourselves and Skip and his crew and Wildfowl magazine and all these catalogs and these websites and social media and TV shows, everything that's out there. We're living in the golden age of waterfowl hunting. We have a lot of ducks and geese in the flyways. We have a lot of access to hunt them. And we have retailers and manufacturers and magazines online and periodicals that give us this information to be successful. The playbook's right there in front of us as the American waterfowl hunter. And I think that it's awesome that you guys are able to come on here and also open the doors to your store and your websites and the manufacturing process and your writing to give that woman or that man or that kid an upper hand in making decisions, because I don't think it's easy. I think it's a heck of a sport. I think it's rewarding as heck, but I think to get good at it, it takes a lot of insight and a lot of preparation. Kelley, you've been on the warpath in waterfowl calling. You were there from 95 until 2010, won the Worlds in 99, the Champion of Champions in 2000. That's 20 years ago already, Kelley. You were 20 years old when you won the Champion of Champions, and you're still at it. You're still eating up with it. This rules your life. We merely exist in a duck's world, and that's why this information is so key to me. Having friends like you guys come on here and educate the listener, the end consumer, the reader, I think it's awesome. I think that we're on to something, and I just want to say thank you to both you and Dawkin. Skip, thanks for putting this together. This has been the apparel edition of the Wildfowl magazine 2020-2021 gear issue at your newsstands right now, in your mailbox right now or next week, sometime coming up. It's not as cool as Hugh Hefner once thought his magazine was, but it's very, very close. Skip, Knowles, let's always remember that. Kelley, any closing words? Kelley, don't ask me who Hugh Hefner was, because I'm not going into it.
No, I appreciate to be a part of this, and not only that, thanks to Wildfowl for exciting consumers that help the retailers, that help the brand. I think I can speak on behalf of Bandit and Josh and all the manufacturers. The gear guide helps all of us. And not only that, it helps translate the message to the duck hunter and get them excited for the fall. So we appreciate what Wildfowl does in that regard.
Doc?
Yeah, I echo that. It's great to have a good, credible. I think credible is important there. Source to have the stuff that you really can feel like there's nowhere else where I can go to find out what's new. Nowhere else better to go to find out what's new. I mean, this has got what I need in it. Wildfowl does that year after year. So, yeah, thanks for being the extension of our voice.
And Skipper.
What Josh just said got me. Everything you guys have said has gotten me so fired up to take it to the next level, spread out across the platforms, offer more information in many different directions. I hate to even try and talk after Chad's sermon there. It got me so pumped up for the season. But thanks for the opportunity. And guys, I learned so much. It's got me really fired up again, because you can reach a point at homeostasis in a sport, and just learning so much just now about the things I love and use and can educate people about. It's inspiring again. So thank you all.
Thank you, Skip. On Instagram, at Wildfowl Magazine, at Final Flight Outfitters, at Banded Brands. Look them up on all of their websites. Google them. Like Kelley Powers told me in a prior podcast, a lot of people don't even type in the URL anymore, according to Mr. KP. They Google it, and that's where that search engine and that SEO and what is that? Search engine optimization, Josh Dokken, is that the correct term? You can find these guys, look them up, become the best duck and goose hunter that you can be. Don't judge your success on a limit. Please look at the heritage and the culture of this lifestyle, how blessed we are to be an American, a Canadian. duck hunter, a goose hunter. It's not entitlement. We are not entitled to this lifestyle. It could be taken away at any second. Let's fly the flags the right way. Let's be good ambassadors, good voices of our heritage, our history, the tradition of duck hunting, goose hunting that we love so much. For Kelley Powers at Final Flight Outfitters, Josh Dokken at Banded Brands and Avery Outdoors, and Skip Knowles, the editor-in-chief and brand manager at Wildfowl magazine. Look for the new gear issue at your newsstands and your mailbox this week. Can't wait to see it and open those first couple pages and get fired up to get through these dog days of summer and get on with the duck season. Stay healthy, take care of your families, be a good community leader. We appreciate you listening to another edition of the Fowl Life Podcast, the Wildfowl Gear Issue Series. I'm Chad Belding. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you all very much.